Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Do you remember in the Wintermute Chapter 5 reaction video when I said, "But now I'm officially on winter break, so I'll be able to lock in on content and try and get some more stuff out to you guys now." Well, then my computer broke. I had to take my precious PC in to be fixed because I wasn't sure what was wrong with it, and with it went all of my background clips, audio, in-progress videos, everything. So, that was great timing, huh? At the time of writing this script, although that'll be a couple weeks before this video actually goes live, I'm still waiting for just another day or two for them to finish fixing it. The good news is that they did diagnose the issue. My hard drive failed. But it was the hard drive that I never used, so that's good. It had me really scared that it would be the drive that has all of my videos, background scenes, images, assets, everything that I need to make videos, but it wasn't, thank God. So hopefully all is well in a day or two from me writing this, and on the day of me recording this, I can say all is finally well. Although I did just get sick for 5 more days, delaying this video even further, so quite the lovely string of events for me in this past month. But anyway, you guys aren't here to listen to me whine about my woes. You're here to learn about the Long Dark. I've been struggling to think about what other things I want to cover in between region guide videos, and I remembered that I still haven't talked at all about Afflictions. This is a topic that I've been really wanting to cover because I don't know the intricate details of all the Afflictions, so making a video teaching you guys about them would also double as time for me to learn more about them myself. We'll be going over all of the Afflictions in a 3-part series, where we cover a couple types of Afflictions in each part, talk about what they do, and how to treat them. We're going to start today with injuries and debuffs, and then talk about buffs and diseases. For the final part, we'll finish out with all of the special afflictions, such as those unique to the Darkwalker challenge or Wintermute, for example. So, without any further ado, let's hop straight into our first entry of this series and learn about the Long Dark's injuries and debuffs. Before we dive into the nitty-gritty, let's establish what an injury is and what a debuff is, although the definitions may not be totally perfect. An injury is an instantaneous affliction that is the result of some outside source, such as wildlife or your environment. A debuff is an affliction that negatively impacts your survivor as a side effect of a choice that you made. The very first injury that we'll be covering today is blood loss. There are a couple of ways that your survivor can receive this affliction. The first is a result of a wildlife struggle or attack from any predator. This technically doesn't include the cougar, but we'll get to that later. The second is if you fall off a rope and hit the ground. And the third is the result of an entirely different injury, but we'll cover that when we get to it. When your survivor is afflicted with blood loss, they will also be afflicted with an infection risk unless the blood loss was received as a result of falling off a rope climb. While your survivor has the blood loss affliction, they will lose 30% condition per hour until it is treated, and will greatly increase your survivor's scent value. Additionally, the effects of blood loss will stack for each instance of the affliction. The treatment for blood loss is 1 bandage per affliction. Blood loss will not go away naturally and has to be treated by the player in order for the blood loss to stop. Due to this affliction being able to kill a 100% condition, healthy survivor in just 3.33 hours, plus increasing your scent to possibly lead other predators to them, blood loss should always be your #1 priority for treatment. Next up, we have broken ribs. This brutal injury is easily one of the most debilitating in the game. You'll receive this injury as a result of getting in a struggle with a moose. While you have the injury, your survivor's maximum stamina is reduced by 50%, and their max carry capacity is reduced by 25%. And your survivor will no longer be able to climb ropes unless they use an emergency stim. The bright side is that the effects of the broken ribs don't stack, so hey, what's one more broken rib? Come on, give me a hug. Unlike blood loss, broken ribs are not so simple to treat. The initial treatment for broken ribs is 2 bandages and any 2 doses of painkillers, pills or teas. Once you have completed the initial treatment, your recovery time begins. Your survivor will now have to complete 120 hours of rest for the affliction to fully pass. Now, when I say rest, I mean sleep or passing time, as both will contribute towards your recovery. Assuming that you do nothing but rest, you will still have to endure the effects of this affliction for 5 full in-game days. And that's just in the best case scenario. This affliction is honestly one of the best designed ones in the game in my opinion. It really forces your survivor to stay put and recover, which in turn forces you to learn how to adapt and survive while in your vulnerable state. Now, let's talk about burns. There are two types of burns, your typical fire burn and electrical burns. There's no difference between the two in functionality, but they can be distinguished from each other by the affliction icons that represent them. The typical way your survivor will acquire fire burns is by walking over any lit fire, which includes campfires and fires around the environment. A sillier way is to not throw a lit noisemaker, which... why'd you do that? You're supposed to throw it. They'll acquire electrical burns if they walk over an electrified wire or into electrified water, both of which is only possible during an aurora. Both types of burns will have the same effect on your survivor. First, your maximum condition is set to 75% while you have a burn affliction. Second, you will suffer constant condition loss while still in contact with the thing that burned you, as well as rapid clothing damage. Although that second effect isn't technically part of the affliction, it is caused by the source of your burn and will likely occur while you're being burned, so it is important to keep in mind. Once you have gotten away from the source of your burn, the only ongoing effect will be the reduced maximum condition. To free your survivor of their burns, you'll have two options. You can treat the burn with a bandage and 1 dose of any painkiller to fix the issue right away. But if you don't have that option, or just want to save your resources, the burn will heal on its own after 30 hours. Alrighty, these next 3 injuries, laceration, minor bruising, and major bruising, are different from the ones that we've covered up until now, because instead of requiring treatment to heal, these injuries have an instantaneous effect, and then they go away without any treatment needed. All 3 of these injuries can be acquired in a struggle with wildlife, and both bruising injuries can also be acquired from falling. Minor bruising will reduce your survivor's condition by 5%. Major bruising will reduce your survivor's condition by 10%. And lacerations will reduce your survivor's condition by 10 to 15%. One detail to keep in mind about these injuries is that the condition damage they cause is affected by your survivor's protection bonus. I won't go too in depth on the details of protection in this video, but to sum it up, your survivor has a protection bonus that is based on the clothing that they're wearing on their outermost layer. This bonus is a percentage value and will decrease incoming condition damage from certain sources by the percent value of the survivor's bonus. One such source are these 3 injuries. So, while it may sound very alarming to hear that one wrong fall may cause your survivor to lose 1/10 of their condition due to a bad bruise, you will rarely actually lose that much, as your survivor's protection bonus will likely mitigate a decent portion of that damage, especially later in runs when you have better clothing. Alright guys, now we get to talk about the most deadly injury in the entirety of the Long Dark: severe lacerations. Your survivor can only receive this affliction as the result of having a struggle with a cougar. Just a little bit ago, when we were talking about blood loss, I said this. There are a couple of ways that your survivor can receive this affliction. The first is a result of a wildlife struggle or attack from any predator. This technically doesn't include the cougar, but we'll get to that later. When I said that, some of you might have thought, Stars, I've been attacked by a cougar in the Long Dark, and I definitely got blood loss from that. But no, you actually didn't. Technically. Because the blood loss that you got wasn't from the struggle itself, but as an effect of severe lacerations. When you are afflicted with severe lacerations, it will immediately create 2 to 3 instances of blood loss, each with their own infection risk. On top of that, your survivor's maximum stamina and maximum condition will be reduced to 50%. I think you guys can probably start to see why this affliction is so deadly. Even in the best case scenario, where your survivor only gets 2 instances of blood loss from the injury, they will die in under an hour if you can't get the treatment. But, believe it or not, that isn't even the deadliest part of this affliction. Many runs have met premature ends because people didn't know about or forgot about this last part of the injury. Every 12 hours, your wounds will open back up and cause another instance of blood loss and infection risk. While that might not seem too bad, there are 2 things that make this so deadly. First, you will not see the blood loss and infection risk appear on your affliction feed. The only sign that the wound has reopened is that your survivor's screen will briefly turn red, similar to what happens when you get a sprain, and your survivor might make comments about stopping the bleeding. But because of this, it is entirely possible to not notice that you're actively bleeding if you're not paying attention. The second reason that this is so deadly, and the main reason that this has ended so many runs, is that the wounds will still reopen even if your survivor is sleeping. And since a single blood loss instance can kill you in less than 2 hours while you have severe lacerations, Many people have gone to have their survivor rest and recover after a scary cougar encounter just to bleed out in their sleep. Because, guess what? Your survivor will not wake up if you get blood loss while they're sleeping. The final nail in the coffin is that severe lacerations has no treatment. You simply have to wait it out. Once your survivor is afflicted with the injury, it will take 72 hours for the injury to heal. That's 3 days that you need to monitor yourself closely to make sure that you don't find yourself fading into the long dark before you're ready. Alright, now that I've talked about how spooky this injury is, let's learn how to put it in its place. After all, there is no threat or mechanic in the long dark that you can't learn how to master. As I said before, there is no direct treatment for severe lacerations, so the only thing that you need to worry about is dealing with the blood loss and infection risks. This means that you'll need bandages and antiseptic, and a lot of them. Throughout the recovery, your lacerations will open up a total of 5 times. That, plus the 2 to 3 blood loss instances from the initial injury, means that you'll need 7 to 8 treatments of bandages and antiseptic to make it through the recovery process. That is a lot. But remember that you'll have 12 hours in between each of the subsequent 5 blood loss afflictions. So you only need to have 2 to 3 treatments ready immediately after being afflicted with severe lacerations. After that, you'll have time to reach a better spot with more medical supplies. While waiting for this affliction to pass, make sure that you're well defended if you're going outside your safe house. Your condition now being capped at 50% until the affliction passes means that you could die very quickly from an unexpected wolf. If possible, stay inside the whole time during recovery. The final thing, and most important thing, to be able to master this affliction, you actually need to do from the moment that you get attacked. Once you've patched up the initial blood loss afflictions and made sure that the cougar's not still within range of attacking you again, make sure you know what time of day it is. Keep that in mind, because every 12 hours, from that moment, you'll get more blood loss. Make sure you keep track of when your blood loss will happen, because then you can make sure you're awake and ready to treat it immediately. Your number one priority is to adjust your survivor's sleep schedule to ensure that they will not be sleeping or passing any sort of time when your wounds open back up. Alrighty guys, the next injuries we're covering will be ones that you guys should know pretty well. We've all been there, walking through the Great Bear Wilderness, and then you see a cool thing in the distance, the tree or something, you know? And you walk up to the hill towards it, and that's right, you know them, you hate them, they're sprains. There are 2 types of sprains in the long dark, sprained ankle and sprained wrist. They both have the same causes, with slightly different effects and treatment. Both types of sprains can be acquired through struggles with wildlife, falling, or walking on steep terrain. For those of you who don't know, you can tell if your survivor is on steep terrain if this symbol appears on the bottom right of your HUD. Now, your survivor isn't guaranteed to sprain anything in these situations, but there is always a chance of it. That chance is also increased when your survivor is below 50% fatigue or encumbered. If your survivor has a sprained ankle, they will not be able to sprint or climb ropes and rock climbs. The effects of sprained wrists are slightly more complicated, but not by a lot. If your survivor has 1 sprained wrist, they cannot climb ropes or rock climbs. Additionally, they won't be able to use any hunting rifles or bows. Now, if they have 2 sprained wrists, they won't be able to use any revolvers, throw stones, or use the distress pistol on top of the other effects. Treatment for the 2 sprains is almost identical. Both sprains can be treated immediately with a bandage, causing the sprain to go away immediately. If you want to wait out the sprain, then a sprained wrist will heal itself after 2 hours of sleep, and a sprained ankle will heal itself after 4. Unlike with broken ribs, passing time will not contribute towards the recovery of sprains, only sleeping will. An important thing to note about sprains is that there is an affliction called sprain risk that your survivor will receive when encumbered. Unfortunately, the exact mechanics of this risk seem to be unknown. I couldn't find any real numbers for it that held up when testing. So we'll have to cover that in a future video where we do our next STARS lab to figure out exactly how that works. Okay, our final 2 injuries are weird ones. The first of which is suffocation. If your survivor receives this affliction, then they die. That's it. Sort of. It's weird. The thing about this one is that you won't ever really get to see it in-game. You'll get the affliction when suffocation risk reaches 100%, and then you die. So instead of talking about suffocation itself, we'll be talking about the suffocation risk instead. Your survivor will get suffocation risk while standing inside polluted air in the Last Prospect and Langston mines. Once the affliction appears, a timer will show up on screen depicting how much time you have until suffocation. In survival mode, this timer is always 50 seconds. In Wintermute, it'll be 30 to 60 seconds based on the difficulty that you chose when starting your story playthrough. As the risk progresses, your vision will get increasingly blurry and your hearing will get fuzzy. As I mentioned before, once this timer reaches 0, your survivor will get suffocation and die immediately. To combat this, you can wear the respirator that's found in the zone of contamination with a canister. Or, if you don't have that or just don't have the DLC, you can step outside of the polluted air, which will instantly reset the suffocation risk timer. One interesting thing to mention about suffocation risk is that, while stepping out of the polluted air will instantly reset the suffocation risk, putting on the respirator will not. If you put the respirator on while you have 25 seconds left on the timer, it will start at 25 seconds again once you take off the respirator. Unless, of course, you've left polluted air. So you aren't able to keep putting the respirator on and then taking it off to try and conserve your canister's condition. Alrighty guys, our final injury isn't anything too special, and kinda only falls into this category as a technicality. The affliction is torn clothing. It is an instantaneous affliction, but has no direct effect on your survivor, instead affecting their clothing. You'll acquire torn clothing either from falls, wildlife struggles, or hit-and-run attacks from timberwolves and cougars. When you receive this affliction, some clothing items that your survivor is wearing will lose a small chunk of condition. I did discover something though, and it's that not all torn clothing instances function the same. I remember a little bit ago on stream, somebody said that torn clothing always chose some random article of clothing to affect. I think it might have been Toasty, but I'm not sure, so I won't say it with my whole chest. But if it was Toasty, watch close, 'cause I'm about to prove you wrong. Anyways, I thought that choosing something random didn't sound right, because it always seemed to me that torn clothing would affect my survivor's shoes. So I did a little mini lab for this one. I loaded up a new save and repaired all of my clothing to 100% condition. I then went to a cliff and fell down a couple times to get torn clothing. Each time, without fail, I lost condition on my shoes and my pants, and only those articles of clothing. I thought it was odd that my socks were unaffected, but then I thought maybe it's only the outermost layer being affected. So I gave myself another pair of pants to put over my now damaged ones, fell again, and sure enough, the new pants lost condition while the old ones didn't. Then I went even further by taking off my survivor's shoes and pants all together to see if I would then lose condition on my thermal underwear and socks. And boom, exactly as predicted. Now I went really crazy with it. The final way to test if my hypothesis of torn clothing only affecting the outermost lower body clothing was truly correct. I took off all of my survivor's lower body clothes, fell a couple times, and none of my upper body clothes lost any condition. So I can say now to you with 100% confidence that any instance of torn clothing from a fall will only affect the outermost layer of your foot and leg clothing. I don't know if you guys could tell, but I was actually weirdly proud of myself for finding this one out. I'm not sure if anyone else has ever discovered this before, and if they have, please tell me, so I don't take credit for somebody else's discovery or anything. But I feel like I've created a new cheesy strategy with this. By taking off all of the lower clothing before going down steep cliffs, you can completely negate all torn clothing afflictions. Anyways, this led me to test out what happens if you get torn clothing from wildlife, because it really wouldn't make much sense if you only lost lower body condition from that. What I found then was that all of my outermost clothing layers were damaged. I tested this for both hit and run attacks and direct struggles. Each time a timberwolf flyby or struggle tore my clothing, every one of my outer clothes lost a chunk of condition. So, to sum up this little mini STARS lab on torn clothing, and wrap up our section on injuries, any instance of torn clothing from a fall will cause a small chunk of condition loss to the outermost layer of your survivor's leg and foot clothes. And any instance of torn clothing from wildlife will cause a chunk of condition loss to all of your outermost clothes. Okay, we have covered all of the injuries and can now talk about debuffs, of which there are far fewer and they are all far simpler than the injuries. Starting with the burdened debuff. This debuff is acquired when your survivor eats a prepper's or stalker's pie. While you have this debuff, your survivor's carry capacity will be decreased by 3 kilograms or 6.6 pounds. The debuff can't be treated, but will pass on its own after 1 hour. See? Super simple. Next up, we have Gorged, which is basically burdened, but for stamina. You'll receive this debuff after eating a Briar House or Dockworker's Pie, and while it's active, you'll have a 15% reduction to your survivor's maximum stamina. Just like burdened, this debuff cannot be treated directly and will pass on its own after an hour. Now let's talk about the headache debuff. For anyone that's played the Long Dark for a bit, you'll know that this debuff really is just a momentary inconvenience that is honestly hardly noticeable. You'll receive this affliction slightly after your survivor drinks an energy drink. You also can receive it immediately after taking a caffeine pill or eating a peach pie, rosehip pie, Lily's pancakes, or camber flight porridge, which I'm just now realizing it's camber and not chamber. I really thought it was chamber. Well, thank God I caught that, or else we'd have another canary situation on our hands. Anyways, the effects of the headache are just a bit of visual distortion. The edges of your screen will blur a little, and your vision may slightly zoom in or out just a tiny bit, but these effects are honestly barely noticeable. There is one extra effect that is far more noticeable though, and it only happens when the headache is caused by consuming an energy drink. This effect is that you will lose all of your stamina once the headache starts. It'll regenerate at a normal speed after the initial debuff hits. Headaches only last for a super brief 20 minutes in-game, unless the headache is caused by a caffeine pill, in which case the headache will last for 3 hours. The strange thing about headaches to me in this game is that they can't be treated with painkillers. I mean, I know me and most people I know run for the nearest bottle of painkillers when they feel a headache start to hit. But regardless, the only way for the debuff to pass is to wait it out. And now it is time for our final and most frequent debuff, pain. Now, some of you might be thinking, wait, Stars, I thought that pain would be an injury by your definitions, because it's from an outside source and it's not a side effect of a choice that you made. While that is correct, I just felt like pain fit better as a debuff just because of the way that it works. This debuff is very simple. An instance of the pain affliction always accompanies any sprain. While active, it'll cause slightly blurred vision, similar to the effects of a headache, but to a slightly lesser degree, and it will occasionally distort sound as well. To free yourself of this pain, you can either take a dose of painkillers for each instance of pain, or you can simply wait 4 hours for the pain to pass on its own. I will say, I strongly recommend that you don't waste your resources on treating pain. Its effects are truly not that noticeable, and don't last very long if left untreated. Painkillers aren't used for much else, but I would always opt for saving them instead of using them for a treatment when it comes to pain. Alrighty guys, that's it for this video. You now know everything that you need in order to manage and make it through all of the injuries and debuffs that Great Bear Island will throw your way. If I missed anything or you have any questions, then let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, then consider giving it a like. It really helps out the channel. If you want to make sure you don't miss the next installment of this series, grab the nearest fish and slap that subscribe button. Thank you all so much for watching, you're all amazing, and I will see you in the next one.